in life, and they never really find their inner potential, that what they're meant to be following. So most people slip up here. But even if you manage to do this, what happens with many people is that even though they know their dharma, even though they know their purpose, even though they know there's something great that they can offer to the world, they find it difficult to live their dharma. Because comfort, security, people's opinions, all of these things may stop us from actually following what we know we're meant to be doing. And so many people don't reach their potential because even though they know their dharma, they're not able to live their dharma. But even if you're able to do this, you still won't reach your full potential unless you use that dharma in service and in a spiritual way in the world. And so many people are successful, they know their dharma, they live their dharma, and they achieve great success, but then they don't use that in pursuance of a higher spiritual purpose. And therefore they're not able to connect their dharma. So the full unleashing of one's potential is when you find your dharma, you live your dharma, and you connect that dharma. Then what happens is it's the complete fulfillment of your life, like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know who has the mic.
Maharaj, I have
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj, for speaking again. Talking about nishkama karma, so being detached from the results. In the society we live in, all of us in relationships, in business, we all have an expectation whenever we endeavor to do anything. Practically, theoretically that makes sense, but practically, even for myself particularly, when you do something, you want a result. So how do you detach from the result internally, like deeply inside your heart? Because it seems wonderful theoretically, but practically it can be quite difficult. Thank you.
I'll say something else first and then I'll come back to this. Practically everyone in the world is insecure. An ancient aphorism from the Upanishads say, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. You'll notice a repeated word in this verse, Purna, which means perfect and complete. So this verse says divinity is perfect and complete, and everything emanating from divinity, including this world and every single living being, is perfect and complete. But what happens is when we forget our connection with divinity, then what happens is we feel incompleteness. So basically, everyone in the world feels some level of incompleteness. And that incompleteness means we're looking for attention, we're looking for acknowledgement. And so these things are very, very deep within the living entity. We're all looking for this acceptance, looking for all of these things because we've become disconnected from divinity, and therefore we're feeling some lacking within ourselves. And therefore when we feel this incompleteness, the way we try to make ourselves complete is through external results, through validation, through feeling a sense of achievement in the world. So the only way to become detached from results in the ultimate sense is to realize that God loves me. That's it. God loves me. I have a relationship with Him. I'm perfect and complete in that sense. And all I have to do here is just express myself through love. And whatever happens after that or doesn't happen doesn't really matter, because I'm already perfect and complete. But because we have this insecurity due to a lack of divine connection, we're all looking to fill that void with different things, and we try to fill it mainly through achievements and a sense of self-worth. And therefore we pin all of our life on achievements. Does that make sense? Yes, I think here. So.
Thank you. If a conditioned soul has committed many lifetimes of sinful activities, is it possible to go back to, at the end of one's life, is it possible to go back to Krishna in one lifetime, or does it take many lifetimes?
Okay. Thank you so much. Krishna is a nice guy. He's not an accountant that's calculating it all. Actually, Krishna is more eager for us to be in the spiritual world than we are. And so, what to speak of one lifetime, Krishna says just one moment is enough. The qualification at the end of this life is just to have love. And it's not a matter of settling accounts and resolving things that we've done in the past. If we had to do that, we could be here a long time. But it's just that you've reawakened your pure consciousness. And so, yes, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesha maham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat. He says, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So, yes, it can be done, Krishna says, in a moment. It's just a change of consciousness. That's all that's required. Is that okay? Thank you. Yes. Oh, like soulmates.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, is it because in this world we can feel almost like under the I forget the word, but like we're the proprietor, like we have some sense of attachment to the relationship, like I've put all this effort in, and we go into the next life, they're sort of attached to us still. But I'm wondering, is there stuff in the Bhagavad Gita that talks about what happens to the relationship after death? Thank
you so much. Yes, we can definitely have very spiritual relationships in this life. If two people come together with a great appreciation and compassion for each other, to serve each other so that they can both attain their spiritual potential, there can be no deeper relationship in creation. So therefore, in our tradition, yes, that's people get married, and it can become an incredible companionship and a partnership to achieve transcendence. Sometimes we have to make sure that what makes a relationship spiritual? That's maybe a good question to ask. I guess there's three ways. We could say, what's your vision of that person? What's the role that you play in their life? And what's the goal of your relationship? These three things help us to understand how spiritual a relationship is. What's your vision of them? Do we simply see them as a physical being? Are we simply physically and emotionally attracted to them? Or is our vision that we're both spiritual beings, we're on a longer journey, and we've come together with this opportunity to help each other? So the first thing that makes something a spiritual relationship is that your vision of that person is that they are spirit. It's not simply physical and emotional attraction. That doesn't mean you can't have physical and emotional attraction, but it means that's not what you're basing your relationship on. The second thing is, what's the role that you play in each other's life? Like I was mentioning, oftentimes we start from a place of incompleteness. And therefore, when we get into a relationship, what we're trying to do is achieve completeness by borrowing something from someone else. But when our role in life is not to take, but to give selflessly to each other, then our role becomes to help each other become the best we can be. And that's a spiritual relationship. And then, when the goal of your relationship is that now we're together we can actually do something incredible to serve God, to serve the world as a team, then when the goal of your relationship is together to serve in a more beautiful way, then that kind of finally solidifies it as a spiritual relationship. So you can have a companion in your life, and if your vision, the role and the goal of your relationship is orientated in the right way, there can be no deeper connection in this world than that. And what happens after this life? Do you continue together? Yes, perhaps you may meet those souls again. We all exist in eternity. In one sense, we're all interrelated. In one sense, we all have connections. We had connections even before we knew each other in this life. But it's just that you may not relate to how you necessarily related in this life, because this life was a chapter in which you had a particular body and mind. So in eternity, you may not relate in that same way. But yes, we're connected. We're all souls, and we're all from the same place.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it's hard to read? Okay, sure. I'll move on to a white background. Is that okay? On a white background.
Krishna's a transformer, right? And then, like, he transforms when someone else speaks words. So, like, he's the god of never dying, right?
Sorry, could you say that again? I didn't hear it because I was looking for you.
Krishna is a transformer of different gods, right? Like the story of when, I think, Balaram and a bad guy tries to kill him, maybe? And he's like a god of never dying.
Wow, I didn't quite get it. Krishna is a transformer, did you say?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Of different
wow,
gods.
that's a nice way to explain it. Wonderful.
She's saying that he can transform into different gods.
He
For example,
transforms,
some
yeah.
of her
He's
friends
the
have been learning
source.
about Jesus. So
Oh,
so
like that you mean.
practically
Okay.
he's all kinds of gods.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
Yeah.
Lord Chaitanya.
Excellent. Yeah, so there is Bhagavan. Have you heard this word? Bhagavan means the Supreme Person, that's Krishna. And then there is Avatar. You may have heard of the word avatar. Have you heard that word? Okay, so avatar means incarnation. And then there are Devata, that means demigods. And
Is
then
it Matya Karma Vanaha,
right.
Ishringa Devan Vamana, Parshiram, and Rama Balaram, and Buddha Kalki is the last of all. He comes from Kali Yuga.
That's the one. You made it into a poem. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's the one. And then there's Maya, which is the material energy. So these are, broadly speaking, the 5 categories. So yes, Krishna transforms. This is Krishna right here. And then Krishna transforms into incarnations, right? Like the 10 that you just mentioned. And then there are also demigods who are in charge of different aspects of the world. They're like, so there's a demigod in charge of the heavens, and in charge of the waters, and in charge of the wind, like that. And then we're living beings. And then there's the material world around us. Is that okay? And everything comes from Krishna. Thank you.
Kind of on the point of this Prabhu who asked before, like relationships after this life. So Srila Prabhupada, I think he said like there's an ISKCON in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
It's kind of a specific question, but like, what does this look like? I know there's other times like some people said, we'll do kirtan together in the spiritual world and these kind of things. So I don't know what kind of answer I'll get, but like, what does this look like? I feel like.
What does ISKCON in the spiritual world look like? We had an old temple president at the Mana, and I once said to him, I said, Prabhupada said we're going to have ISKCON in the spiritual world. He said, great, I hope I'm not the temple president there. Well, what is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness? It's the souls who are coming together to connect with eternity, to remember who they really are and serve selflessly with love. Perhaps we need to but maybe we need to not limit our thinking of ISKCON to just be a movement, an institution, a particular incorporated society that exists in different properties, but rather ISKCON is where souls, pure souls, come together to express pure love and serve Krishna and serve each other. And so in that sense, that's the real ISKCON. The real ISKCON is not just a rubber stamped community, but the real ISKCON is the place where sincere people come together to serve. And perhaps that's what the spiritual world is. And in that sense, in the ISKCON, there is a ISKCON in the spiritual world, the pure ISKCON, free of any imperfections.
Thank you for that brilliant answer. I'm going back to the overthinking versus reflections that we discussed this morning. And I was thinking that perhaps overthinking could be related to the emotional state, that when we become emotional, we tend to think from a place of emotions, as opposed to the reflections, which is more from a place of self-realization or intelligence, and also having tapped into some truth or knowledge or information. And we have that. Srila Prabhupada gave us the truth. He gave us knowledge and information. And so somehow, even though we have that, we somehow default, well, my mind anyway, defaults to the overthinking sort of stage, or the overthinking process, even though I know better, because Srila Prabhupada gave us the truth. So what would be a strategy that I could implement, or we could implement, to sort of make the default the reflections, the self-realization process, the understanding the truth, rather than going back to the overthinking?
Yeah. I think when we marry reflection with consultation, in other words, we do some internal work, we reflect, we churn things in our own consciousness, and then we share that, we discuss that, we clarify that with someone who knows us, someone who loves us, someone who has the spiritual wisdom to help us. Then what happens is we take all of that reflection and then we take it to someone who can help us to clarify and crystallize it, and then through that discussion we can then come to a call to action, like I said. And we could say between overthinking and reflection is that overthinking is generally done in isolation, whereas reflection, even though it's an activity which is done within oneself, it's also coupled with consultation, so that one can actually ensure that their inner thinking and reflection is in the right direction and is coming to something tangible. So yeah, the real thing is that after all our thinking, we want to have a way forward, something to do. We want to have a tangible outcome that improves and upgrades our life. And so I think as long as we just always stay focused on that, then the thinking should continue to drive us forward like that.
Thank you.
It's okay. Yes. Yeah. Whoever gets the mic.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You said that when we're writing in our journals, we should be honest. But what if your thoughts are negative or have no beneficial value? So how can I change and improve my thoughts into useful observations?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Just coming back, therefore, when we were talking about overthinking and introspection, one of the key distinctions we made is that overthinking is just our thoughts, our feelings. But what introspection is it brings in a higher dimensional lens of wisdom. What do the teachers say about this? What do the saintly visionaries say about this? What do the scriptures say about this? And so if we say in my diary we feel well, I don't feel like I have any skills, I don't feel like I have anything to offer, we can be very honest. But then what we can do is, how do we react to that through the eyes of scripture? What does scripture say about that? And we might find that the scripture has a much more empowering and uplifting message for us when we feel like that. And the journal is the place where we transform very negative and disempowering thoughts into something much more progressive and uplifting by bringing a higher dimensional wisdom into it. Does that make sense? So yeah, by all means, write down how you're feeling, but then ask yourself, what do the higher dimensional sources of wisdom say about how I'm feeling and how I can get out of this? Yeah. Okay.
Hare Krishna. It's kind of a personal question for you. You're talking about how you're an introvert. So I was thinking, we hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, we're in this movement, and the devotees are like soldiers. But when we see devotees like you or Prabhupada, especially sannyasis, his grihastas as well, or vanaprasthas, but you see it mostly in sannyasis because they're most preaching like that. But it's beyond an army soldier. An army soldier, they go and do their duty. They come back home and then they have their family life. They play video games on the weekend, do whatever. But you guys, there's nothing like that. You don't get to choose whether you chant your 16 rounds or not today or every day. It's every single day, and you're traveling all around the world, and you get to choose whether you do it or not. But you choose to not choose. Pretty much, you choose to do what you're told, what you're asked to do. And I guess my question is, was there ever a turning point, or there are a few things you're trying to remember to stay, And my question is actually, before you took sannyas, did you know what you were getting into? And and being an introvert, for us, it's especially because it's not your thing to do all this preaching outwardly, publicly. Usually you would tell a new person, don't do something that you're not, what do you call it? It's not your nature.
Not your nature, yeah.
Otherwise you may fall down. So you're constantly putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. How do you do that?
Very kind. The day I took sannyas, people were congratulating me, and I was kind of I never saw sannyas as an achievement. I think it's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity to serve. That's all it is. I think for the last 25 years of my life, I've practically lived either out of a locker or a suitcase. I don't think that's necessarily a sign of spiritual advancement. I think it's just my nature. I travel, people are like, but you switch time zones and all of that, but it's not really that. It's like I like it. The point I'm making here is that I don't think a sannyasi is inherently more advanced in any way than anyone else. I think we all have a nature, and I think I was very lucky that I just found my nature. And so for me to do this stuff is just kind of natural. Yes, there are certain things which are unnatural, but like I was mentioning yesterday, the feeling of being able to serve kind of trumps and transcends that. But I think everyone can do that in their own way. Everyone can find a life that fits for you and just fill it with more and more service. And yeah, that's what makes life exciting. So yeah, I don't really people see my life sometimes and think it's austere, or it's, it's hard, or it's like intense. I don't really perceive it like that. It's just an adventure. It's exciting and it's beautiful. I wouldn't change it for anything. And I think anyone can have that life, and anyone can do it in a way that's natural and kind of achievable for them. So, yeah, I mean, when I grew up, my name was Sandeep. When I joined the temple, my name was Bhakta Sandeep. Later on, I got initiated, and my name was Sutapa, and now I kind of travel around the world, and people call me a Swami. I mean, behind all those names, we're just spiritual beings just trying to serve. So I don't think I think we can all do it. And like I travel around the world now, and I see people. I think what gives me the greatest faith in Krishna consciousness is I see people in every community who are giving their heart to Krishna. And sometimes they don't have a position, they don't have distinction, they don't have fame or popularity, but they just wake up every day and they're just inspired, and they just do it from the heart. And I realize, yeah, these souls exist who have given their life in service, and they're experiencing the beauty of that. So I guess that's what we're all trying to do.
Are there a few things, or are there difficult times at all, if there are? I'm assuming there are, because we're all human beings.
Difficult times?
And if during those difficult times, are there like a few key things you're trying to remember, like if what your Guru Maharaj said, or a quote in the Bhagavad Gita, or anything?
Srila Prabhupada became my inspiration very, very early on in my spiritual life. For me, Srila Prabhupada's life answers every doubt, every question. So when I feel a little weak, or when I feel a little drained, I reconnect with Srila Prabhupada, then I become energized again, and I become reconnected with why I begun this whole journey in the first place. And so I think perhaps, yeah, we always have to ask ourselves, why did I even begin this journey? What am I doing here? And when we reconnect with that, then even when times are, a little difficult, we move on. Thank you.
Maharaj, is there a way for us to find out the other 4 we've covered 3 this morning? YouTube or something like that we can see?
Yes, there is. I'll tell them to send out a link. Sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you.
Just relating back to some of the questions Mataji was bringing out. Remember I had a conversation a long time ago with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and I asked him, Maharaj, do you think that in general we could say that most devotees would benefit from having some sort of therapy? to educate Krishna consciousness? And he said, absolutely. And also when we look at his book, The Spiritual Warrior, he specifically describes certain situations where a lot of our anarthas and inhibitions can really interfere with our ability to follow Krishna consciousness as it should be. So there are a lot of various techniques to actually understand the language of the subconscious and to implement a lot of those things that can be of benefit.
Yeah.
And a lot of the modern psychology practices actually just makes us better at our problems. They don't actually have, so I find that a lot of techniques that actually really do help the subconscious, dealing with the subconscious and our limitations and traumas and issues tend to relate back to the Vedic roots and methods. And even just looking at the various stories of the Mahabharata or the Bhagavatam, we can see that most of these amazing elevated devotees, and yet they have had issues, and they had so many problems that they had to overcome, and the limitations. So I think even the expectation that we would ever be free of that, it's very naive, asking too much of ourselves. I think even just looking at those stories that are in the scriptures for our benefit and recognize and pay attention to how they have dealt with those problems, and somehow they've always let their focus back to their higher purpose and how that helped them to actually overcome the problems. But then of course there are various techniques that we can use to specifically help to clear traumas and negative experiences and shift ourselves from seeing ourselves as victims to something a lot more positive. So rather than using the negative language that just reinforces our shortcomings and limitations, more focusing on how we want to be, how we want to see ourselves, and to give that positive imagery to the mind that will then help to get us to where we want to be.
Thank you so much. Yes, yeah, definitely. There's a sense in which, although here we are practicing a spiritual process which is ultimately the solution to all problems, it doesn't mean we can't take advantage and benefit from material therapies that there might be out there in the mainstream world. I often think of it like a hospital which needs nurses and doctors. If you're in a hospital which only has doctors, well, good luck. You might be gone before the doctor comes and does the operation. And if you're only in a hospital where there's nurses, then it's great, but you may never get out. So I think both have to go together, and there are certain things on the material level which are like nurses, which help us day to day and help us to find some level of pacification. And then I think there's the doctor, which is the deeper spiritual transformation that has to take place, which is the ultimate solution that gets us out. And I think instead of seeing one as replacing the other, I think they can work together. Maybe that's the last question, is it? 3 o'clock? Is it? All right.
Okay. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh.
Yeah. My question is just about dharma. So you talked about swadharma. So I just want some clarity in terms of what that actually means. Is it like your nature or your kind of...
Swadharma?
Yeah. And secondly, how to kind of find your swadharma?
Yeah, so swadharma has 2 aspects, varna and ashram. So ashram means your stage of life. So there are 4 stages of life I was mentioning earlier today: student life, householder life, retired life, and renounced life. So there are 4 stages, and that generally is more clear. According to your stage of life, it's much more clear where you are. And then Varna is like, broadly speaking, teachers, managers, entrepreneurs or business makers, merchants, and kind of those who support the other three. So we each have a place somewhere in these four. It's also sometimes mixed, like someone may be of a mixed varna. There may not just be one thing there. So how do we find that varna? So this one is easier, ashram. Varna, how do we find that? I think I also mentioned yesterday. Analyze your personality, look at your strengths, weaknesses, and all those kind of things. Ask mentors who know you, get feedback, and then attempt different things. And what will happen is that gradually you will gravitate more and more towards understanding what your unique contribution is, like that.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Is that okay? All right, wonderful. All right, I can see there are many other questions, but I guess I'll be here for some time, so if anyone wants to speak, I'm happy to be here. But just to say thank you so much for coming. It was wonderful to spend the day with you. I hope there were some things there that you can take away that may help you in your journey. And look forward to being with all of you again very soon. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Please, one big, great Hare Krishna to His Holiness. Nityananda's Grand Appearance Day, so in that theme we'll have a lotus, that's way better, a lotus festival at the temple where we'll all have an opportunity to offer flowers to their lordships, and also Keshava Maharaj will give a class talk, discussion in brackets, on the subject as well. So please from 5:15 if you can be there for that. That would be really, really wonderful. And that's all my little announcements. You're done with me, except you'll see me again at 5 o'clock. However, that's it. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Again, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Did you read what I wrote the other day, or just heard second-hand?
I haven't read it. The team just told me that there was. Okay, no, sure. No, for me it's
I also
do you want me to write the email address?
Your email
address.
Yeah. Which might elaborate a little. That was a great session this afternoon. It was nice speaking all day. But I was particularly appreciative of how you handled all the questions, even some of the bizarre questions. That was great.
Thank you, Tom. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Say that much. Yeah.
How are you?
Maharaj, good. I haven't spoken to you yet. I don't particularly have any questions. It's really nice to have you.
Housekeeping announcement. There is classes in here from this evening for the village, so on the way out, in a timely manner, please bring all the rubbish you have with you, help tidy up. It would be greatly appreciated. So if we can be running smooth.
Really,
take that on board.
It's very humble. So going to Mayapur actually. When are you there?
22nd.
22nd.
March or February. I'll see you.
Really?
I'm there for 2 days. I'm going on the 17th. I'll leave on the 25th.
Yeah, so
keep going, keep walking the journey, and I'll see where it takes you. Like I said, make it an adventure, make it a time of growth and elevation. It's a beautiful time in your life. And find Krishna, find yourself, find purpose.
getting old, but
often think of purpose as a light which flips on at one point in our life, and if it hasn't, we're